A quick guide to food preservation. Interested in starting a home food business? Why not try food preservation? Fresh fruits, vegetables, fish, seafood, and meats can easily be turned into products that can keep longer and thus be good for selling. There's a primer that can help you choose what method and what food items you can work with. Preservations is one of the oldest technologies man has adapted for survival. Food, if left in natural conditions, rots and spoils due to the action of enzymes and microorganisms. With the use of heat, acid, salt, and sugar, food preservation aims to control or stop these natural occurring processes so that food can last longer. With modern technology, preservation extends its objectives wherein the physical state of food, color, flavor, and nutritive properties are also preserved. There are many ways of preserving and most are quite simple that they can be accomplished in one's own home. Preservation of food is one way of cutting down on wastage and promoting self-reliance. The fundamental principle underpinning the method is basically the same. Create an environment not suitable for microbial growth. This simple means to remove or reduce moisture in the food, acidity, seal and protect, and keep it at temperature above or below the survival range of microbes. Canning, a process requiring the heating of food to a specific temperature and holding the food at that temperature for a specific length of time. The food is to be placed in a special glass container that can withstand the heating process, and as a result, a vacuum is created hermetically sealing the food within. Applicable foods, fruits, vegetables, meats, seafood, and some prepared food like jams and jellies. Tools and equipment, canning jars and lids with a sealing compound. Stockpot or any deep metal pan or pressure cooker, autoclave with an accurate pressure gauge. Type method, boiling water bath. Filled and sealed jars are kept submerged under boiling water and processed for a given time. May be used to process high-acid food. Steam pressure canner processes food under pressure at a temperature of 115 degrees centigrade, the only reliable method for low-acid food. Basic guidelines. 1. Fruits and vegetables that are mature and slightly underripe are best for this method. 2. Food less than 4.5 picohenries is best for boiling water baths. If the pH is more than this, an acid may be added in the form of lemon juice or vinegar. 3. When processing at higher altitudes, processing time by 5 minutes for every additional 1,000 feet. 4. Follow tested recipes and avoid modification in the processing method. Drying. The oldest method in preserving foods, this involves the process of dehydrating products until the point where there is not enough free water to support growth of microorganisms. There are several advantages of drying as a method of preserving. Easy, no need for elaborate equipment, resulting food shrinks, making it less bulky, shelf-stable and easy to store. Concentrated flavor and sugars. Applicable foods, fruits, vegetables, meats, seafood, grains, legumes and nuts. Tools and equipment, depending on the type method used. Type method, sun drying. Simplest of all, where the food is laid out on mats and left under the sun to dry. Solar drying is a modification channeling the sun's rays into a specially designed unit that concentrates the heat, increasing the temperature to 20 to 30 degrees higher than regular sunlight. The machine has a ventilation system that removes moist air, thus shortening the drying process, but it has weather dependent. Oven drying, most practical way to experiment on food drying, but is not energy efficient and it is difficult to maintain low temperatures, making food more susceptible to scorching. Electric dehydrator, food is dried on trays. A dehydrator is a self-contained unit with a heat source and a ventilation that allows drying indoors. More expensive in terms of initial investment, but it maintains low temperatures and consumes less energy compared to ovens. Basic guidelines. 1. Vegetables and fruits must be prepared for drying as soon as possible, most preferably right after harvesting. They should be blanched, cooled, and laid out to dry in minimal time. 2. Food should be dried rapidly, but not so fast that the outside becomes hard before the moisture inside becomes hard before the moisture inside has a chance to evaporate. Slow drying ensures that the food is totally dry from inside out. Recommended drying temperature is at 65 to 70 C. Once surface moisture is lost and the food begins to develop a thick outer layer, reduce drying temperature to 60 C. 3. Drying must not be interrupted. Once drying has started, it must not be cooled and then dried later on. This is to prevent the growth of spoilage organisms. 4. Drying should be done in the shortest time possible, so food must be in small uniform sizes to facilitate the process. Constant stirring is suggested and the pieces of food laid on mesh or screens to increase the surface area exposed to air. Curing is a food preparation method that involves the use of salt and sugar's ability to draw out water from organic tissues. This method may have other additional ingredients like nitrites and nitrates, which are usually synonymous to meat curing. This method is also almost always used in conjunction with drying, pickling and smoking. Applicable foods, meat and faith, tools and equipment, storage containers with cover, cold storage type, method dry curing, the food is rubbed with the curing mixture. Wet curing, the food is submerged in a brining solution. Basic requirements. 1. Use a tested recipe. Measure all ingredients, especially the salting, brining mixture. Nitrates and nitrites are toxic at high concentrations. Measure use, and store properly. 2. Follow good safety practices and sanitation. 3. The curing process is done in refrigerated conditions at 4°C. Meats and fish must be completely thawed for the cure to penetrate. 5. Curing should not be done to salvage spoiled meat products. Fermenting, the process of fermentation, makes use of desirable microorganisms like bacteria and yeast. It requires that an environment be conditioned for them to flourish in the food and, as a result of their metabolism, acids are produced which in turn inhibit the growth of spoilage microorganisms. Flavor compounds and alcohol are also some of this method's useful byproducts. Applicable foods: fruits, vegetables, legumes, fish, meats and dairy. Tools and equipment: resealable glass bottles or jars, non-reactive storage containers, storage space or rooms. Type: method, solid-state. Microbial and product formation occur at the surface solid substrates, like in the production of cheeses. Anaerobic, the absence of oxygen is required to promote growth of wanted microorganisms. The production of desirable microorganism to grow, like in wine, beer making, and sourdough culture. Basic guidelines. 1. Sanitize all tools and utensils and process food items correctly based on recipe. This prevents unwanted microorganisms from getting into the food, especially when beginning the fermentation process. 2. Ferment in an environment where temperature is constant and relatively cool. 3. Ensure that lids are tight when using anaerobic fermentation. Smoking, this preservation method is not effective if done alone. It usually is considered as post-processing step after salting or curing, wherein the salted or cured item is left to hand and then exposed to smoke. The process is a low-drying method where dry skin pellicle forms around the smoked food, creating an extra layer of protection. Smoking also adds to the flavor of the food item and is one of the reasons why this method is popular. Basic guidelines. 1. Equip smokers with calibrated thermometers. 2. Smoke meat items and fish until the recommended internal temperature is reached. 3. Cool hot smoked products quickly and follow correct food safety procedures. 4. Precautions should be followed when operating smokers. Applicable foods: cured meats and fish, vegetables and fruits, cheese and eggs. Tools and equipment: smoker, smokehouse or makeshift drums, barbecue grill with cover. Type: method, hot smoking. The cured food is left to hang or arranged in racks to dry and then expected to heated and smoky conditions. The high temperature 52 to 80°C further dries and shrinks the food, reducing the yield and concentrating the salts. Cold smoking is typically used as a method of enhancing flavor. The pre-cured items are hung dry and then cold smoked. The temperature in the smokes ranges from 20 to 30°C, which is not enough to cook the food. That is why the meats must be fully cured with cold smoking. Basic guidelines. 1. Equip smokers with calibrated thermometers. 2. Smoke meat items and fish until the recommended internal temperature is reached. 3. Cool hot smoked products quickly and follow correct food safety procedures. 4. Precautions should be followed when operating smokers. Pickling, this presentation method involves soaking, curing the food in a solution containing acid, salt, or alcohol. It is often combined with other methods like fermenting, canning or refrigerating with other methods like fermenting, canning or